Welcome to this week's episode of the Digital Drop podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about unlocking member engagement, and I'm very pleased to be joined by an industry leader and expert on the topic, Richard Gott. Richard, you are very well known within the membership sector, predominantly through your position as the chair of the MemberWise network. I think for the benefit of anybody listening who's not familiar about MemberWise and with yourself, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about what MemberWise is and what is it that brought you to the position that you are in today?
Okay, so thank you for inviting me to join you today. And basically, I think the first thing to say is that, like many people, I fell into membership. I think if you ask 99.9% of the people who do the day job, very much that's kind of what happened. And hopefully, most people enjoy doing the day job. So that's kind of where I came from. Um, I started about 25 years ago, started working for what was then British Dental Association as a coordinator. Found that I really got on with the actual job quite well, being a people person, I suppose, and then decided because of obviously the scale of the organisation that for me to progress in my job, I probably would need to go to another organisation. So I then moved to the College of Optometrists and I was their first ever marketing manager. And with having a business background, it was quite interesting because the people that were around me perhaps weren't all of them with the same background. There were people from the armed forces, for example, who'd fallen into membership. There were people who'd been there for a long time. But the very much, I kind of felt like I needed to meet more people like me. And I thought there must be people out there. And so decided to set up the network and really just create a sort of place where there's no such thing as a stupid membership question, and people who are responsible for member focused roles, whatever level, however long they've done it, they've got a place to go where they can talk to like-minded professionals and try and drive up, I suppose, a mixture of best practice and also meet providers that are providing products and services to the sector, like like your good selves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you, first of all, congratulations on the work that you've done, because from my perspective as an agency supplying the sector, I can certainly say that out of the networks that are out there focusing on membership, we feel working with you guys has by far been the most fruitful in terms of the connections that we make, the conversations that we have. So whatever you've done, it seems to be working. So well done on that piece. And from my perspective, I always found the membership sector to be a very unique sector. And from the way I would always describe it, membership is the only vertical that constitutes of all verticals. But from your perspective, what would you say are the unique characteristics of this particular sector that differentiate it from other sectors?
So the first thing, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've kind of did a business degree. I've spent time working for a number of different types of organisations. One of the big things for me was the actual relationship that these organisations have with their members and their stakeholders. And what makes it, I think, almost unique is that actually the relationship differentiates potentially what would be more of a transactional relationship, perhaps with more commercial providers, or if you think about how you work with, I don't know, your local bank, your supermarket, you pay your money, you get what you get, and then that's the end of it. But with membership, it's quite different in that the more people get into it, from a membership side of things, the more fruitful it can be for them. So, whether it's a member of a professional body or a corporate member of a trade body, um, they're getting from membership a relationship, and that relationship will help them to improve. Um, and that's something that you can't. It's not available from anywhere else, really. And the more authentic membership bodies can be with that relationship, and the more that they can either upsell or cross sell, or immerse themselves from an engagement perspective, the more they're going to get in terms of I don't know, new member acquisition, retention, engagement, value, growth. advocacy. I mean, the list goes on.
Mhm. And based on your experience, because you deal with so many organizations of different scales, what would you say today are some of the most common challenges that you would expect most organizations to be facing to some degree?
There's a whole list of them. So I mean, in terms of the priorities that we've got, we do capture those every sort of 2 years through our digital excellence research. Basically, it's a statistically significant piece of work that actually hones in on what membership looks like. And in terms of the actual challenges and priorities that organisations have got, I'd say before 2016, and this is showing my age within the sector, it was all about new member acquisition. It was about getting more new members, getting more new members, getting more new members. And then sort of during 2016, we started to see organizations realizing that if they better engaged with the members, then actually from a sustainable growth perspective, that was better. And obviously from a member retention perspective, it was better. And again, the analogy that we've all heard is like a leaky bucket. If you imagine, you're plugging the holes in that leaky bucket from a retention perspective, enhanced engagement enables you to do that so that, the water level can rise. And so, we're seeing increased growth. 2 years ago, that changed, and I think it's a mixture of post-COVID hangovers, and also a requirement from business has got tougher, costs have gone up. You Brexit, I mean, you can talk about all those different things, but it's a much more challenging environment to work in. So now the priorities and the challenges of membership bodies are all linked to sustainable growth. So it's that engagement piece plus the new member acquisition side of things. And I think we were talking about it the other week that by our calculations, only 50% of the cost of keeping the lights on comes from subscription fees. So that other 50% needs to come from other places. And whether that's, online, whether it's events, that type of stuff, it's much more challenging. Whereas, 25, 30 years ago, people would join and just be happy to belong and perhaps not get an immense amount of value from membership or just value membership in its own right. You're now getting the generations coming through that they want to see their pound of flesh. They want to see something in return for that annual subscription fee. And if you can't articulate it, and if membership's an option, people go elsewhere.
Yeah, I think you're going back to 2016, and in our industry, this is a very significant time frame. Within looking at how membership organizations engage with their audiences. When I first came across the sector was in around 2007. I think I worked as a technology consultant for some significant membership organizations, but a huge amount of the engagement between these organizations and their members was predominantly offline. It was in in-person events and things like this. To what extent has that changed, and to what extent are things that would have been accepted and would have been commonplace as being offline, say in 2016, 2017, to what extent has a lot of that moved into online as far as engagement between an organization and its members is concerned?
Things have moved quite quickly. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing, I mean, as a network for people who work in membership, we've, obviously we hold regular events. We've got the research, and obviously we, through our online community, we regularly sort of temperature check where things are headed. And certainly with the membership space, it's moved online. I mean, that's a given now. It probably maybe 15, 20 years ago, it might have been a nice to have. It might have been, oh, well, if you've got a members area, then, oh, that's good. We can put some documents in there and, people can log in and stuff. And what we've found though now is that the relationship obviously is almost like it's become almost online and offline, this sort of blended, you hear that quite a bit, approach. And the expectations that people have got about their online member experience is very different. So whereas 20 years ago, we could have got away with a clunky experience, this idea that you might, I don't know, register for a membership body and then re-register to get into the website and then have to register again for an event, for example, that's now become unacceptable. Whereas, now we're seeing much more smoother online journeys and offline journeys that are actually enabling that increased engagement. Whereas, a few years back, it was more, I think, frustration. Again, another challenge is is integration. So, we're hearing a lot about systems not talking to each other, and that's one of the biggest blockers we've actually got at the moment. And we're getting there. We're implementing industry standard product. So, when we're talking about association management systems, we've got like obviously, Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce. We've got, content management systems like Umbraco, Kentico. All of those types of products are now becoming industry standard. So we're actually using tools that actually are industry standard, rather than tinkering around or perhaps doing things in, I wouldn't say on the back of a cigarette packet, but we're doing things with much more sustained investment because we've realised how important it is. And I know, again, back to the Influence 100, the biggest 100 membership bodies in the UK, we've estimated that the actual spend or the extra spend on tech is something like 500 million. So, we're more invested, there's bigger expectations, and we're actually having to deliver better than we ever have done before.
Yeah, compared to other sectors, in my experience, this vertical carries a lot more technological debt than a lot of other verticals. So it feels like there's been this huge wave post-COVID to jump on the digital transformation bandwagon, which I'm not a huge fan of that phrase because for various reasons we won't get into that. Would you say digital transformation is still the big thing that most of these organizations are trying to tackle?
I think so, yeah. I think we've moved from, I suppose, with COVID, that really pushed us into digital because we didn't have a choice. And perhaps before then, maybe that influence wasn't there. And then post COVID, I think we've kind of gone, oh, okay, so we can do this online. Oh, actually, that has worked with online webcasts or whatever. And because of that, we're now looking at perhaps the tools that we put in place as a coping mechanism, but now actually we're looking at more deeper integration, more deeper functionality, and actually maybe taking more of an informed approach. So again, just a soundbite that I've had from some providers with our conferences. Just after COVID, everyone was just jumping at the chance to get together. They just wanted to get into a room and bring back normal. And they'd be walking around an exhibition and they'd be like, oh, okay, oh, that looks pretty. Oh yeah, we'll buy that learning management system, or we'll do this and that. And it's taken the suppliers that open the membership body's eyes as to what they can do with tech. And what we're finding now, fast forward to sort of 2025, 2026, people are walking around that same trade exhibition, but they're actually firmly more informed about what the opportunities are. And they're speaking to providers and they're not saying, oh, that looks pretty. They're saying, we think there's a need for an online member community. What solutions can you provide that can enable us to do that? We're looking for a new CRM system. We need to do enhanced member self-service. What product can you offer? So I think we're more aware of what we can do, which is really helpful. More informed about what's out there, and we've got some great suppliers like yourselves that get membership, that provide services that be really helpful. Whereas again, 25 years ago, that just wasn't the case.
And do you still see any resistance anywhere? So and I'll explain my question a little bit. So we work with a lot of membership organizations, and for example, I'm not going to name anybody, but if I pick one of the medical organizations that we work with, typically the leadership, the senior leadership of that organization, the people from the medical industry with a medical background, are essentially doctors. And what we're finding is that there's for digital transformation to be implemented successfully, it's got to be adopted from top down. It's got to be something that the whole organization buys into. And one of the hurdles that we've seen is we're often dealing with stakeholders on, let's say, mid-tier of management. And the biggest hurdle is actually getting them to go to the board and to their seniors to get approval on budget and to explain why this investment is needed, or why digital is what the way forward. based on the way you engage and work with these organizations, do you still see any of that? Obviously, you'll get individual pockets within organizations, but do you still see resistance on an organizational level?
Yeah, it's a funny one because the membership space, it's not special in terms of it's operating any differently in terms of the actual operational stuff. Um, what is challenging is that you've got sort of I don't know, within some organizations you've got a them and us culture, you've got the staff, you've got the board members, the committee members, you've got board and committee members who are really passionate about what they do because they're doing what they do, and equally maybe sometimes maybe expectations are higher than's realistic, and so it's quite difficult to kind of balance those things off. And certainly, I mean, I know when I was the head of membership for the Royal College of GPs, and a director for the Royal College of Psychiatrists. So I've dealt with this firsthand, and what happens is that you kind of need to broker a relationship with them, and it's really difficult because you've got all these different people. Some of them parachuted in for like only 3 or 4 months and they're really frustrated. Some of them are really keen. You go from one extreme to the other. You might have a committee member who's really jaded and they've been doing it for the last 20 years and they just think, so what, if nothing's going to change. So it's really quite interesting for those senior leadership teams to really try to engage with those stakeholders or those advocates. So they typically account for about 1% of the membership, and they literally will not need any nudging to do anything. If there's something not right, they'll be the first to tell you about it. If there's something that's amazing and it's really good, they probably will be the first to tell you how it's really good. So in terms of balancing that off with the requirement of a digital transformation program, which is, again, that phrase, I think it makes it sound like a vanity project. It's not. It's this idea that you're moving things. So the support that you provide into members, you're moving it online, you're making it deeper, you kind of using all those different tools that you've got. And it can be challenging. And I've got examples of I don't know, budget running low because there's been no user testing, and because there's limited budget left, let's not do any user testing, and it's like flashing red lights, like no, we need to have contingency to be able to do stuff like that. Equally, you've got maybe risk adverse approaches whereby, and I mean, you've probably seen these like an RFP proposal where they're wanting hundreds of pages and they want you to rebuild what was there in the first place, and it's like, well, you want to get rid of that, so why would we even go there? And then on the flip side of it, you've got organizations where and we're seeing this move by a lot of the Irish membership bodies, where it's almost on a handshake, and that's nice in terms of the way that business was done, but actually it's too light touch. So in a roundabout way, so what I'm saying is it is challenging, but one of the killer recommendations that we've got is that if you're going through this process, so say you're going through a digital transformation process, you've got your project manager in place, you've got your stakeholders who are meeting regularly to discuss things. Make sure you've got a project sponsor, for example, who's actually on the board, and it's not just the chief executive. And then what you can then do is get buy-in to make things happen. That's always been one of our strong recommendations, and make that board member accountable for the outputs and the outcomes that you really need. And also the flip side of it, get a project manager. Don't do it in your spare time. Give sensible resource, because that's another thing we're seeing, that there's not adequate resource being put in, and expectations that sometimes unrealistically high.
And do you feel, with regards to this investment, let's call it, do you feel that this is an event or an ongoing process? Like, if I'm an organization, we're going to invest $500,000 this year and we're going to stop investing next year. Is that the right approach, or?
No. So the old way of doing things was, until something conks out, don't do anything, then throw a load of money at it. And we've moved away from that, I think, or at least most organizations have, because they've realized that, particularly if you're going to move to industry standard products and work with agencies like yourself, it's going to take a sustained investment. It's not something that can be magicked up. I mean, you throw enough money at something, it can work, but in terms of making a sort of sustained investment, you've got the initial input that you'll need to get yourself in that place. But then typically, the investment that's required for that, I mean, we see within some industries, as much as 10% of annual revenue is actually being reinvested in those systems and processes and relationships. We calculate at the moment the UK membership sector is probably only putting in about between 1% and 3%. So actually, it's below that average. So I think realistically, perhaps it should be more like 4 or 5%. But it depends where there's a will, in terms of people championing it from the inside. I've seen countless organisations throwing money at vanity projects, which tend to be a quick fix, but actually in the medium to long term, it doesn't work. And equally, having that approach, it can lead to a really transactional relationship with agencies and providers. I mean, we've always advocated this kind of partner working, where you're continuing to work together, alerting membership people to the latest developments, and that kind of thing. And that should be better and mean that we don't have to do these, like, I don't know, do nothing for 5 years and then spend a load of money. It should be a lower amount but sustained. And that requires support rather than one-off purchases.
I really, really like that, Richard, the idea of comparing it to a proportion of the annual turnover. So your recommendation, if you speak with an organization and you see that roughly around 5% of their turnover is being invested as an ongoing budget for technology or digital, let's call it, that is a great starting point, and that is a good indication of whereabouts financially organization should be. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's straight to internal infrastructure as well, though. So if you think about everything that's going on, whether it's the hardware that's in the office, whether it's the, I don't know, the rented server space, whether it's the digital agency, that would span across all of those different areas, and also a dedicated person that's actually responsible, or someone with the responsibility to continue that development.
Really useful, really useful insight, and it's the first time I've actually heard somebody quantify it, and it's a great way of looking at it. So based on, you're clearly in the thick when you do these reports on an annual basis. So what's really valuable for us and anybody in the sector is actually picking up your insights and understanding the trends. So you're really well positioned to educate me and the rest of our audience on this. So based on your professional, personal opinion, what are the big things that all membership organizations should be mindful of or should be focusing on in the next 3 years, let's say?
So the next 3 years, integration, that's one thing from an internal perspective. Getting kit to talk to each other, making sure that we've got things working. So your CRM, your learning management system, online community, your website, whatever it may be, getting all of those things to connect so that we can have these kind of seamless, I hate that word, seamless online journeys and experiences. That's a big thing. The other thing that we've got is, and this is why we're focusing this year on growth, because based on the figures that we've got, organizations will need to grow just to stand still over the next sort of year to 3 years. And that's going to require deeper engagement and more new member acquisition. And so to be able to do that, they need to put in place more strategy, they need to put in place more robust plans, and they need to invest. We are seeing that organizations that are not investing, they're getting into trouble. So whether it's digging into their reserves as a short-term fix, or they're losing engagement, those things will become more pronounced as we move forward. Those that are doing really good things are looking at more of a portfolio approach. So they're looking at, okay, so subs maybe is 50% of what we make. So what do we do with the other 50%? So let's focus on our online learning. Let's focus on conferences, sponsorship, relationship with commercial providers, looking at expanding their markets. Maybe you traditionally only had like a UK membership, and perhaps there's a global opportunity there. And equally partnering. I mean, in Australia, we're seeing a massive increase in the number of organisations that are merging, just because the market can't withstand so many individual organisations. So, there's a lot of change taking place, and it's whatever the catalyst, the cost of doing business, whether it's COVID, we're moving forward, politically, we've got national insurance contributions that are increasing. We're thinking that there may be a bit of a hiccup this year. Maybe, we're hearing about redundancy programs for commercial organisations, but equally, if we're working smartly, and when I say smartly, and again, based on some of the figures we're getting from America, if you've got a membership team that are fully automated, fully integrated, and they're using the right kit, you should be able to save about 30 to 40% of the capacity that you've currently got within your member-facing teams. So if you imagine picking up that capacity and then dropping that into engagement programs and increasing member benefits and recruiting more new members and doing really good things, there's going to be an impact that we can have there, but you've got to be willing to invest in it. The other side of it is, you could say, well, we can save costs. So I think what we're going to see is going to be maybe a short-term brain drain within the membership sector. But then I think when there's a realization that we need this smarter approach, we're going to see more technical roles turning, like digital focused roles, rather than, say, administration type roles. So I think we're going to see a really big shift there. And what we're keen to do as a network is kind of be that first port of call where, I don't know, if you're blasted into Planet membership and you've got to get on with it, we're a trusted place to go, and we'll give you some sensible advice. We'll let you meet people who are doing similar things, and as you know from the conferences and events and the online community, that's where we're at. So we're there to support through, I think, what could be a challenging 3 years.
I think one of the unique things about this sector is that unlike most of the verticals, it's a sector that's happy to share knowledge. There's very little competition. So unlike other verticals, what I find very refreshing is that membership organizations want to learn from other membership organizations as to what's best practice, and the ones that have done it are happy to share that knowledge as well, which I think is very refreshing and certainly makes your events and that network immensely more valuable. Well, yeah, absolutely. Because you don't get that in a lot of the other verticals, because everybody's competing. I would say membership almost culturally feels like somewhere between private and public sector. It's not quite as far as, let's say, healthcare or local authorities in terms of how much they mirror each other, but it's definitely a very open sector that's keen to share knowledge. So one of the frustrations that I've had in terms of, once you do get buying into investment in technology, and once the organizations are happy to undertake a digital transformation, understanding what the purpose of this actually is something that I've found surprisingly difficult to get across to organizations. And in my experience, what I'm seeing is an increasing trend of organizations digitalizing the way in which they currently do things. So you've got all of these processes that have developed over the years and ways of doing things. And what we're spending all this money trying to digitalize that, whereas what we're jumping up and down and trying to scream to everybody at the top of our voices is that, no, that's not what you want to do. This is a unique opportunity to scrap half of those processes, streamline those processes and get rid of that. Am I the only one that's had this experience, or do you get to see this challenge as well from your perspective?
Yeah, it's been one of those things, and it's been a real frustration to me as well. So over the sort of we set the network up in, what was it, 2008, and through, by default, with what I do with membership, I get to meet quite a lot of people who are doing just that. They're in that process, they're thinking about the process, they've done that process, and they're jaded. They want to do the process, and the internal stakeholders, get in the way. There's all sorts of people at different stages, but the main problem, I think, is that membership bodies by default are risk adverse. It's one of those things. A lot of stuff's done on committee, and it can take time to get through red tape. And in terms of risk, the propensity for risk within membership bodies is naturally lower, just because of the way that they're set up. Very much, it can be sort of top down in terms of decision making and the like. So that doesn't help. The other thing that we found that's quite a difficult one for people to really get their heads around is that when people go to tender, so whether it's a website, whether it's a magazine, whether it's whatever, there's a propensity to go, right, let's look at what we currently do and let's just do it with someone else. And it's like, well, no, that you can do that, and I'm sure it'll deliver something that's the same, but actually you're not fixing the problem. So you're going to get people who are either, whether they do it internally or whether they bring in consultants to do it, you'll get people taking or really they should be taking a snapshot of what's going on and actually looking at ways to actually make things better. And unfortunately, what I see a lot of the time is they just take that snapshot and they pick it up and drop it into the requirement that they put out there to providers. And then, you go through the process, hundreds of pages of whatever, it's got to do this, it's got to do that, and actually when you unpick a lot of it, it's not really needed if they actually adopt the, the new technologies. It's not there. And we do see it a lot. And, we put together a best practice guide for procurement and selection. We did it with the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, actually. They took a look at it. And we've suggested a structured approach. We've suggested, again, don't bring in 20 odd providers when you go into tender, actually whittle it down through really pertinent questions to about 3. When they come and talk to you about what, that they're going to provide, ask for a demonstration, talk to clients, really dig deep. And then that transposes after the procurement to the relationship. So, in terms of, if you've not asked the right things and the right things haven't been delivered, typically that can create a very negative relationship with the provider. And then, there's kind of the whole process of moving goalposts, people, blaming, all that sort of stuff. So, we just need to take a more structured approach. And I think we're getting there. I mean, that's why, certainly with the digital conference that we do, we are championing people who are doing the right thing and getting them to share their stories with people so that they can understand that if they do it in a really or a more structured and informed way, it can be better, not just for them, for their suppliers, for their members, for the public, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah, it's I often say less is more. Do less but do it right, and of course you have to speculate to accumulate. But I think one of the big areas that membership organizations overlook is revenue streams and sources of revenue. And one of the things that we keep finding again and again is once we undertake a true digital transformation, that it opens up mechanisms and new revenue streams that were never there previously. And I completely agree with your previous point that you're either moving forward or you're moving backwards, right? You can't stay still, so you have to grow to remain valid. Based on your insights, I mean, we're running a little bit out of time, but I really wanted to get an example because you've seen lots of examples of how it's done well and how it's done not so well. Could you maybe share one example? You don't need to necessarily name anybody, but share an example of an initiative that a membership organization has done, let's say focusing particularly around member engagement, that really was a success story, and then contrast that with an example of an initiative that wasn't a success story.
Yeah, so I mean, good. I mean, I'll focus on good for a start because I mean that's kind of what we do. So
yeah.
So I mean, in terms of an engagement, I mean, one of the things that springs to mind was a campaign that I ran a few years ago with one of the membership bodies that I worked for, and it was a lapsed member campaign. It was about bringing back a load of people who had been members and for one reason or another had gone. So basically, we segmented the data to find out pretty much why they'd gone and when they'd gone, and then we worked with a call center, and we gave them quite a straightforward remit. And we said to them, right, we've got all these people, and they've gone. We want to bring them back. These are the reasons why they've gone. And what we'd like to do is bring them back, but actually we need to actually mold the conversation around the scenarios. So someone who left because, I don't know, in year X, because, I don't know, there was a particular president that perhaps didn't do certain things, or, perhaps there was a blip in terms of member service at a particular time, and actually zone in and say, well, you do, things have changed. We're doing things differently now. And so what we did, we ran the campaign, and we kind of literally had the call center do different tranches of calls. And within each of the tranches, as soon as they got to a point with the lapsed member where the person was basically saying, right, okay, I'm listening, tell me what the deal is, we actually, and this sounds a bit counterintuitive, we actually said to them, right, we're going to stop the call now. What I'm actually going to do is put you in touch with a colleague, and they're going to explain why they are members of the organisation. And this colleague is actually going to be a member that lives and works locally. So, can you let me know a convenient time? So we went around the whole of the council and basically said, look, membership's responsibility of everybody. Can you help us with this campaign? And there's nothing better than hearing it from the horse's mouth, hearing from somebody who really gets it. And so we, and also there's an element of, oh wow, that person spoke to me, local celebrity or whatever, in terms of membership, so that was something that was really popular. And I suppose the good news story, it was involving your members to get members, and actually not coming across as salesy, make them want to come back or make them want to come in. So that's the kind of the good news story. The bad
One
news
question on that one
story.
before you jump into the bad one. One question I've got to ask. To get the members, ultimately you recruited your members to help you acquire or engage with other members. How do you incentivize those members to do that? Was that proactively incentivized? Were you looking for volunteers? How did you get that proactivity and input from the existing members?
We basically we kind of empowered them through messaging, and we was like, well, why wouldn't you do this? You're representing your organization at a local level or a special interest level or whatever. If you really do buy into the value of being part of the organization, then you really should be advocating it. And don't get me wrong, we weren't sort of telling them to hit the phones for hours on end or do stuff. I mean, you're talking about I don't know, 10-minute, 15-minute phone call, maybe 3 or 4 times or something like that. And actually, there is an element of ego as well. There's an element of, oh, that's good. I'll be seen to be, really, knocking on the doors kind of thing. But also, there's nothing better than hearing a recommendation from someone who does what you do. I mean, it's like if you get a tip from a colleague and they're like, oh, have you done this or have you seen that? You're thinking, okay, so if this is working for you, this is clearly going to work for me. So that's what I found with it. You do get people who are just not going to join that. I mean, that's the point of it. You do get to a point, and I know when I was working within one of the Royal Colleges, they got something like a 98% membership retention level. To get that 2%, you're going to have to work hard to get it. So actually, sometimes there is a requirement to maybe take your foot off the gas and do effort somewhere else. I mean, that's it's all about engagement. So getting your stakeholders in, getting them to endorse what you're doing, and equally it's win-win. They'll get something from it, and actually asking them to do that. So that's my good news story. In terms of not so good news story, it's a toughie, isn't it? I mean, I know I can come up with one which I think will probably be, really, be good news bringing in your ears. It's that membership bodies should not try to be software houses. What we've seen is a number of organisations that are like, oh, why would we buy that? We can make it. We can do it ourselves. And I've seen examples time and time again where actually they just should have gone with an industry standard product and with a provider that was able to deliver on it. This idea that you're suddenly employing people to do things, that these things are bespoke, that they need to be changed and be adapted. I think we've seen millions and millions of pounds wasted on those projects. And with a number of them actually seeing, and if I give you an example, like a membership body that wants to create a learning management tool for its members, build it, create it, do whatever. And then, of course, you're seeing software providers come into the market who are continuing to invest in the software, they're continuing to develop it, which is obviously what we advocate. But the idea that that membership organization would need to then kind of keep playing a catch-up game linked to the functionality that they've got, it just ends in tears. So that's probably one of the things that I would say is not such a good news story. And from an engagement perspective as well, particularly if it gets in the press or members find out about it, they'll hold you to account and say, why are you spending hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds doing this when actually you could just work with another provider who'll deliver it and deliver it better and quicker?
Yeah, it's you're absolutely preaching to the choir here. Why reinvent the wheel effectively? And I'd take it even a level further, where I would say that agencies should not be software houses. What I see from our side is, agencies that are developing software as well, they also get in a conflict where what are you focusing on, selling the services or investing in the product? And they also typically fall behind the true software vendors that are focused on product development exclusively. But look, we're not going to go in that direction. I think that's very valuable advice, and needless to say, I absolutely agree with you. Before we go, I'm keen to touch a little bit upon the report that you guys are doing. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that, when we should expect it, because I think it's an incredibly valuable resource that I would strongly recommend to anybody. So tell us a little bit about when the next one is, and maybe a preview on some interesting learnings that we'll get.
Yeah, sure. So the digital excellence work that we do, there's two strands to it. One of them is the event that we have, and obviously we're going to be running that. It's every year. This year it's 15th of May, where we're actually looking into the impact of the pretty much the statistically significant figures that give a snapshot of what membership looks like from a digital perspective. And what we do is we run this piece of research it's normally every 2 years. We used to do it every year, but actually every 2 years is about right. And we pretty much go out with a survey to our members, so to about 8,000 membership people. And they pretty much just give us a snapshot of what's going on within their organizations. And then what we do, originally we actually had a market research agency conduct that activity, but we've now found that with the knowledge that we've got of the sector, it's actually more helpful for us to actually run the math, if you like, on the figures. So we normally get around about 5 or 6% response rate, which means it is statistically significant, i.e. it means something. It's what's going on. And that report we put out, we don't have it sponsored, so it's adopted by all suppliers, it's adopted by all membership people, and it very much gives a view of what's going on. And so what we're planning to do is release that research later this year, probably around the conference time. We'll be publishing the report, which provides people with a snapshot. And the other thing that's really good with the report is it shows the way things are moving. So if I give you an example, when it comes to the adoption of certain content management systems, we will list the content management systems and the numbers and how much they've increased, so that if people are procuring, for example, that they will have a snapshot of what's going on sector wide, rather than putting your finger in the air and sort of, I don't know, I'll guess. It actually is in black and white. So yeah, I mean, expect that. We make it available free because of for input like yourselves. The sponsorship that we get through commercial providers enables us to do that piece of work, and it's just something that wouldn't happen unless we did it, or there would be perhaps a solution driven focus on it, which actually makes it more of a sales based initiative. So it's a good piece, it's a solid piece of research, and please do take a look on the MemberWise website for it.
Absolutely. I've found it particularly insightful and useful, so much so that I actually think perhaps we should get back together and have another conversation after the reports come out. We've had a chance to churn it, where we could dig a little bit deeper into factually proven insights, let's call it. I think, look, that's all we've got time for today, Rich, but look, it's been immensely valuable to have you on. I'm sure that anybody listening is going to find this conversation useful, and needless to say that I look forward to seeing you in due course, and hopefully picking up this conversation, digging a little deeper in regards to some of those insights. Well, thank you so much for your time today. and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.